now, but we do need some time in which to have the quality. So let us continue.
Okay, great. Well, we do want to get through all the material, so I'm just going to talk really fast like this, and then we'll be able to get through all the math, and then everyone will understand, yeah? No. What do you guys want to do? So we have, I know some people are interested in the sort of math and the technical details. Now, we're not going to go through all of that in 36 minutes, but maybe we'll do like a breakout session later in the week. And for anyone interested, we can work through that stuff. We spent as like a group of 5 of us, like 7 hours going through 10 slides. So we probably don't want to replicate that experience for you. Now that we've been through it, I think we can do it a little bit more quickly, but there is a lot of meat to unpack there and getting everyone on the same page. But I thought the discussion we were having sort of before the break was really, really valuable and invigorating. So if there's, other sort of topics like that, it doesn't have to just be about us, but if there is anything anyone wants to kick off, by all means. Did you have something? Yeah.
Hello. So I want to stir it up and throw out some ugly shit. I hope you follow it. So, no presentation. I got 2 notes. It's easy. Do what you want. Yeah, I trust you, Julio.
Perfect, by the way.
Yeah. Great, Julio.
Absolutely spot on. Yeah.
Oh wow. So I was. Let me see. Okay, God. I was wondering about some of the questions that people asked earlier about adoption and how to make this stuff easy to grasp, and that led me to this small thought that I'm sharing with you. So, like, if you want to get somebody to accept a complementary currency or an alternative currency, and he's a business owner, I think that's pretty easy. There's a number of proven tactics that might work. And the simplest is you go to the guy and tell them, do you want to sell more? Sell more. It's sold. Now, what comes after that is the contract that you're trying to establish. So in a normal, non-convertible mutual credit system, it is about you want to sell more, you got to spend then what you earn in the network. That's the sort of the other side of the coin. Then in the case of clearing, you could actually sell it as, do you want to owe less and do more with your cash? Right? That's not rocket science. And most of them, they go, they might open that window and try. Are we solving anything? I'm not sure. Why? I think it would be nice to have Paolo's last slide, but if you remember like the last slide, right? Summarizing it, you had the upper part where you have finance going down to the sort of real economy and the commons underpinning everything. I think there's a broad agreement in this room that picture is sort of representative. Now, we can do a million variations of that. My point there is, and also trying to answer what's the perfect sovereign currency. I mean, that's another week of work. But think about the dollar as just let's focus on that for a second. Now, what is like one of its strength and why it is used? Let's leave alone General White and Bretton Woods. That's probably the real reason, but leaving that part aside, it's convenience. So what the dollar does as a unit of account enables interoperability today all over the world when it comes to trade, right? $1 is $1 today. Let's leave it at that. But what happens when we take that convenience and actually adopt that abstraction? We get a concrete advantage, but what do we lose? What do we miss? Or what do we get in return? We get dependency, right? So one unit of account for the world is also a cage, and it's one. And we are all stuck in there, embedded into it. It traverses relation, etc., etc. Good. Now, what happens if we sort of want more independence, more sovereignty. Where's the bargain? To me, it seems like there needs to be some inconvenience. There cannot work other ways. Because, I mean, can we have the most convenient system and have it working fairly? We wouldn't be here. Capitalism would be perfect, the best possible world. But you know, as I know, that that's not the case. And like, I think there's a big elephant in the room, not in this room, but in many rooms, in our community that has not really been, I think, addressed. Thanks. And I think so. If we're ready to give up, we want more independence, we need to be ready to sell or manage inconvenience. Good. Second bit is about waste. Because the other thing that the system does beyond abstracting is hiding its garbage collection. I was talking in development terms, but when I get a loan and I do not pay it back, all the consequences of that are hidden. It's a mystery. My debt might be packaged, sold, resold, and so on and so forth. That's implicit, that's hidden, that's abstracted away. Again, convenient, dependency. So my question to us would be, are we ready, or like, are we thinking about how to sell this inconvenience, or in the other way, how to sell independence in an adult way, not as kids? Like that I think is one of the properties of the current system. So you have the admins and you have the end user. The end user doesn't know shit and is just being fed. And it's been always like that. That's the story. So we need to break that. And I think what we're not been like doing enough is focusing on waste and on defaults, the ugly part of the picture. That's my contribution. I hope I scared you enough. And so, yeah. And I don't have the answer, so I'm happy to like engage with anybody. Yeah.
Hey, thank you. I like when we focus on the ugly side, but the ugly side suggests risk. And I'm wondering how risk calculation enters into your analysis. Do you want me to give the answer for you? No.
Okay. I don't have an answer for right now, but I think we'll spend some time in the next month or maybe half year or whatever quarters, trying to come up with proper, or at least I'll try to be as try to answer this question and manage risk in a more transparent, more sustainable, and mostly aware way. That's the thing. If we keep on relying on abstraction, and I don't think we'll ever see change, as like it will always be, somebody else's problem. I think that was also the difference that from medieval finance and right now. In medieval finance, the Genoese got screwed by the king. Right now, it's the bankers screwing everyone else, if you want to. So I think we have to start from that.
Giuseppe, but I'm thinking that the risk actually is handled by the fact that MTCS decreases the size of the balance sheet. So the risk is actually relatively straightforward to answer about. The harder problem, I think, is what Giuseppe pointed out, is that if we want to make an adult proposal about this idea, we need to also talk about the bad news, okay? In other words, the advantages of COFI and MTCS, etc., come with greater responsibility to wean ourselves out of the dollar system and to come up with governance processes that can make let's say autonomy more sustainable and so forth.
Okay, can I just push back just a tiny bit on that? Because as a person who's quite enthralled by financial derivatives, I know they get a lot of bad press, but they're basically a hedging mechanism, yeah? And there's good and evil hedging. And we would all perhaps draw exactly the same distinction there. But I wonder, could you inject, I mean, even if something might be small, its ramifications may be massive. Could you inject into your analysis the existence of derivative finance?
Yes.
Yes, will do. I'm very happy with yes.
Now I'm really scared.
Actually, one thing about the risk bit. Let's say all of us here are a community, and there's a virtual bank, let's say an algorithmic bank that gives out loans, right, to each of us. Now, the real question is, some of us will default because, you know, I break my leg and can't do my job, whatever. It's a matter of like natural. So there's a sort of natural default rate that I think is completely, by economics, misses completely. Agree with all the derivatives, we put all the edges, etc., etc. But bottom line, there's gonna be garbage. So the question is, how do we deal with garbage in a way that we reduce the dependency and increase the awareness? I think that sounds good, and I stop here.
Yeah. Oh, he fled. He got scared off by derivatives. Someone else? Yeah.
You just mentioned garbage and you mentioned waste earlier. I read a book called Surviving the Future, Culture, Capital, and Carnival in the Aftermath of the Market Economy. Yeah. And there's a whole chapter about waste and how waste is healthy for a community. And I'll bring it down to earth and talk about pumpkins, for example. If you destroy the excess pumpkins by having Carnival, then you're not tempted to sell your pumpkins on the global scale. So waste can be good too. Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, it's really how we manage. I'm not saying it's like risk. You have trust. There is risk. No matter what. That was Bitcoin, gold, or anything. There's always risk. The point is, how do we manage to keep it at a decent level, and even like knowing defaults and shit will happen, but deal with it directly, without dependency, without somebody that the Fed, the lender of last resort. I mean, we didn't talk about that function, right? That's a big elephant. Those guys are playing with all of us in a godlike mode, and we're like there waiting. So what's going to happen with my mortgage, with the rates, or whatever? And it's up to us.
So over here. What I think we need to do is instead of focusing solely on clearing or solely on sovereignty, we need to start thinking about basic relationships and how the whole ecosystem works. Not just we are complex adaptive system. We are dealing with complex adaptive systems, and in there you have to take into consideration the relationships, not that much objects. So in order to do something meaningful, you have to have solution that embeds all the things together, and this is also the way how you implement these clearing protocols and stuff. You connect them directly with with the systems that are used already, and you just give people tools to use. Now they will use it if it is beneficial to them. So they are beneficial. You have to teach them, of course, but if you have all these things put together, if you have a relationship that is done in a way that by doing it, it reduces risk because it is transparent, it is reciprocal, it is blah, 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 then you have immediately the system that by itself helps reducing and mitigates all these things. So one of the things that I miss here is we are all engineers. We need anthropologists as well. We are dealing with people.
In the room.
Yes, how many? Okay, cool.
Anthropologist. Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry to the people online. Sorry, internet.
Following directly on from Goresh, these terms waste and inefficiency, they're engineering terms. They're not ecosystem terms.
Sorry. Sorry about that.
No, not sorry.
really,
Not sorry.
I'm still learning.
It's not a critique.
Oh, okay.
It's once you realize that, then it says, there would be another way of thinking about the same system, which comes from an ecosystem angle, which actually says, no, waste is food for some other part of the system. And efficiency is actually the fastest route to the heat death of the universe. That's efficiency. And we don't want that. We're playing on energy returned on energy invested. We catalyze entropy production, but we steal a bit of what we catalyze to make ourselves more interesting and have fun. Now, that's the real name of the game. So if we, instead of efficiency, which has KPIs, we talk about health. What is the health of this system? It has no KPI health. It's just better or worse. You can't give a number to health. Anytime you try and give a number to health, you collapse your capacity to design, to think. Anytime you think of something as waste, you fail to see it as food for another part of the system. So this is not me coming saying, because of those things, I now know how to do it. I'm saying, if we persist in approaching the economy as a machine, we will design a machine which will design the humans out. And actually, so if we can try hard to grapple with the idea that you breaking your leg and failing to repay your debts is not waste, it's actually part of, as you say, it's inevitable. And it's part of, and what is that? That involves care, right? Giuseppe broke his leg, he can't work. Oh, right, he's no longer economically relevant. Goodbye.
Yeah, let him die. Yeah,
That's not what we're here for. That's not what we're here
It's
for.
he's a burden. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the mentality.
So anyway, I can riff on that for ages, but I think everyone's got the point. And
Thanks.
but if we break his leg and heal him, then we can increase GDP. So
Yeah.
if you try, you're welcome to try. It doesn't work. You can't get one number. Health is better or worse, but what's your health number? 3.
Let's say the health network. How many?
Well, you can come up with as many proxies as you want, but I will stipulate to you that all those proxies will be reductive, and then you will optimize for the things you measure and not for the things that you don't measure, and you will discover that you've got a club foot.
Yeah. So, okay. So I want to make a callback to Thomas's address on the local and global, and somewhat associate with the themes currently present, ecosystemic themes. Now, the reason I want to address it, first of all, is because I very much agree with that analysis. And in a way, I'm grateful that it kind of certain problematics I had always with this local paradigm and how it's been used. At the same time, as a group with interest of communicating outside, of course, it's not in your interest to bring this message to people and say you bring it in Berlin and you drive off a bunch of people who might be interesting to you, who have a locally minded paradigm themselves. So I started thinking about this, that perhaps this question, now taking into account everything that was in as a basis of Thomas's analysis, perhaps this is a question of reconceptualizing what is local. And think of it rather in terms of a topography, topicalities.
So the current paradigm of local is often built on kind of an idea of fence. So our local is this city or this village or this suburb, whatever, and which is a kind of fence-like thinking. And now we are a separate area, which is problematic for the reasons present. But if we rather, to make a concrete example, if we take the human body, and that is now the global of a certain context, but then we look at something like the skin cells. Now, what is interesting about skin cells and the kind of structures, relational structures that they have, is that they have highly complex local structures. That is, the toughness of the skin is not just based on one cell, but actually the relations between cell to cell. But it doesn't stop there. If there is a wound, which is a collapse point, and the addressing of the wound is first addressed by highly organized local resources, which then work once again in complete harmony with the global of the body and collaborate to a high extent. This is locality in a completely different sense. It's not locality that rejects the idea that the global is really the soil you cannot pull yourself out of and wither, but rather it's building this sort of in awareness of this global of the body. How do you build this topography that builds an intense network that emphasizes certain qualities in the local? And I think that direction and even the structures present there might be informative in terms of how to conceive local in these kind of terms that are, I think, more constructive overall. And that direction, that design area, I think is potentially highly useful and perhaps might aid you to not to go out there and reject the local and lose the people with that.
Beautiful point. And again, many of the points folks are making sort of all come back to conceptualizing things in terms of networks and the flows within the networks and modeling and understanding those flows. And maybe we can't put individual numbers on health, but there are ways to evaluate the health of networks. And I think that's the sort of maybe a big part of the problem that's confronting us is how do we evaluate the health of networks without just boiling it down to a single number?
I just wanted to bring in some perspective from a book I just finished reading. I don't know if you've heard of Joe Brewer. He's one of many, for decades, bioregionalists who's framing things in terms of
bioregions.
Yeah, bioregions and the functional landscape of the land as being the starting point for managing our economies. This is also not a new idea. Many cultures for thousands of years have done this. So returning to, rather than all of this conceptual, what are we assigning value to? There's a very clear understanding of this that already exists and that can root us in the placement to land, which is what we really need to regain connection and respect for that which has been lost. And also the other thing I wanted to mention in the last session that I didn't get to mention around strategy was perhaps some of this can come through reconciliation and returning land to the commons, being that we discussed one of the biggest drivers of social and economic inequality is privatization of land. We also have noted on a recent call with these earth regenerators, tons of boomers who realize that the world is fucked and really want to do something about their legacy and have a lot of land and wealth. So can we mobilize this particular demographic who is much responsible, and we all are complicit, in returning the land to land trusts? So I think those are two very viable, very well-established ways that we can begin to organize and orient our actions.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Good stuff.
Oops. Oh. I have a question related more to the risk discussion that we started out with. Maybe it's basic because I'm not as deep into the theory than some of you are. But it's about trust. It was mentioned multiple times also in the presentation before that, for example, at the local level, there's more trust, or that CoFi, as opposed to blockchain, requires some level of trust. And I would just invite you to go a bit deeper on what exactly that trust is, or what am I trusting in? What am I afraid of? Who am I trusting? Yeah, this kind of question.
Good.
And maybe also in a way which would be related to how the strategy of how you engage more people, like how do you explain that also to people who maybe are not monetary theorists or engineers?
My two bits on like the first bit, like if I understood, like you're asking, so what is concretely this trust about? Why am I trusting, etc.? Like there's not a single answer. The point is, when you're born, you don't get asked that question. Like, have you been asked if you trusted the euro or the ECB or whatever? Nobody has been asked. So I think we're already progressing in having the power to ask ourselves the question and give ourselves the answers. Coming back to deal and the measurement, I agree with like the danger of reducing work to measuring and the way measurement influences the output. We have a unique chance, I think. No one in history before us had coordination mechanism that might help us constantly redefine how we measure health. So, I mean, I think there's a little glimpse of hope in the despair, and coming to like the bioregional and the locality bit. I think bioregions are the way to go in terms of framing it, because it's out there, it's physics. And like, I mean, when I started Sardex, it was on Sardinia, not for a reason. It was an island and it worked freaking well because there was the sea. Nobody can take that away. Point is, the economy is interconnected and we have no ways to participate in the definition of those dependencies. Like that's missing, and that affects the risk part and the way we trust. That's broken, I think. So, yeah, I don't have an answer or like just figure
maybe
it.
a bit more concretely, like you know, the reason you accept dollars or euros is because you trust that other people are going to accept them in the future, because there's a coercive state backing it, demanding it for taxes and so on, right? But when you make a loan to a friend, or when you sell goods to a client on credit, you're extending trust, essentially, right? That they're going to pay you in the future. And that kind of trade credit is extended all over the world all the time to the tune of trillions of dollars, right? What the insight of mutual credit, which we'll hear much more about later in the week, is that you can use that inherent trust to actually bootstrap a currency, right? So there's this problem of like, okay, well, I can issue a currency and say I have Ethan coins, and is anyone going to accept them? Well, only if they trust that other people are going to accept them, right? And so how do you bootstrap that trust? And the idea with mutual credit is to build a system where you say, look, we're all selling goods and services to each other. Maybe we don't have closed loops today, but we trust that we'll be able to close the loops over time, right? And if you can build that trust, then you can potentially issue a currency that people are willing to use and accept, because they trust that others in their community are going to accept that currency, because that's the contract for participating, right? And so, the idea is, can we extend that, and can we run that at sort of multiple scales in a way that allows the trust that exists in these sort of local levels to actually expand and scale up to the globe and sort of back. Sort of one
more bit, like to add on what Ethan's saying, is that normally all the local currencies I've come across, like we always try to emphasize the exchange function of money. Money has to be spent, is not meant to be hoarded, etc., etc. That's good and well, but there's one aspect that we're missing, and I think the coming together of different forms of liquidity, be it crypto, fiat, in a more agnostic way, might be that we come to what's being called, I think, qualitative theory of money. I think by Richard Werner. I'm probably misquoting, but the whole point is there can be quality intermediated credit if it feeds on investment. Like most local currency I know of don't do that because I mean it's pretty hard and you need a banking partner. But let's say we map the community, we start doing stuff, but then at one point we might realize that in the local bioregion there's a huge potential and a gap. I'll give you a simple example. Still today, this is something like from 10 years ago, we realized that Sardinia is an oil producing region, and the European Union made a regulation. So at the restaurant, you can't have a bottle of oil. You need those little plastic bags with 10 like whatever, little tiny amount of oil. So we went to a couple of restaurants looking at the oil, and it's like, oh, made in Bologna, 200 kilometers of sea, made in like Sicily. There was no oil produced in Sardinia that was packaged locally. Now, if I had at that time, or with Sardex, we had an agreement with a proper investment on real economy production capacity, you would have easily closed that loop. You would have a market leader locally packaging, and it costed the machine to package the oil is 20K. Like, it's not like $1 billion. And you would stop a lot of stupid stuff going back and forth, making the local economy stronger. Like, what's missing is not enough to have local money circulating locally if there's no investment capacity. Like, that's crucial. I don't know. I mean, I came to this later.
Is there anyone, there's some people who haven't had a chance to speak. Anyone who we haven't heard from, we would love to hear from. We've heard from you. we will go to Scott if there's no one else, but I just wanted to leave a few seconds so that if someone, yes.
Go, Hans.
If you look at the net and look at it at the matrix, you have it's only 1 second and it changes continuously. And you have the goods distributed, the arrows in this direction, and the mirror is the arrows in the other direction. That is money, and it's continuously changing and changing and changing. And what would be the number for the sanity of it? It would be the right distribution. This is what we owe us, the right distribution. And if you excuse me that I talk about the twin token clearing community. The twin token, the protocol, I posted it here in the chat. The protocol is when I buy something, you give me the bread, and I don't pay because I pay later at the end of the month. The whole community does it, and we create the money, and the money is backed by what is given, what is distributed as a real good, which we all need. And there cannot be an equilibrium because it's changing constantly. And this net has a flows which are regularly, which have a regular pattern. What everybody needs every time, again and again, will show a pattern in there. And for this we should care. We should grant us. And the point is, the coins needed gold from a mine. Bitcoins need energy. Numbers from miners. And what we need is the trust. And we have the trust. We can mine trust, unbelievable amounts of trust in a community. And this is what is for me the essence of mutual credit in a community. And but it is not the totality of money, which is described by this, only the buying and selling money for goods we need. No investment money is in there.
Yes.
Thanks, Ethan. Yes, and I want to push back a little bit on on this juxtaposition between economics and engineering. Speaking as an economist, but I would plead as a defense, a person who hates economics in a deeply sophisticated way, having spent my career working on it. So I understand that issues like efficiency can be, that the engineering depiction of efficiency trumps the sorry to use that word, but trumps the economic depiction of efficiency. The thing is, at the moment, those economists are still triumphant. They're still the ones who are defining what efficiency is. And you say we can't measure health, but I would guarantee that within 5 years there'll be a whole lot of spread bets introduced about health. So you can't measure health as an aggregate, but you can invent an index of something. You know, malaria rates, poverty rates, somewhere or other, and the financial market will place bets on whether the outcome will be above or below. It's vile, it's repugnant, but it's real, and it's the frontier of finance. So it seems to me there's a certain hiding in the juxtaposition between engineering and economics, and that hiding is the danger of taking the moral high ground and saying, well, those economists are fucking idiots. But I think, which I think they are, but that's another matter. So I think the elephant in the room, to use a term that has been used a bit, is there are measures of GDP, and we all hate them, but they're measures, and national statistical agencies are designed to measure those things, and they're very elaborate. The question is, why aren't we talking about alternative ways of measuring the economy? Alternative accounting structures where the categories down the left-hand side are different, and the way the numbers fit against the categories are defined differently. So long as we stay talking about, we're indifferent as to whether we use Bitcoin or US dollars or euros, because we can actually merge them into each other and we can neutralize them. My concern is that for so long as we do that, we are always putting off the political and ultimately the environmental and social challenge of saying, how do we develop a token system, a tokenomics, an alternative economics that measures differently? And I don't want us to keep putting that off. And measures of different kinds of value, absolutely.
Ethan, at the back.
Yeah.
I just want to ask the question. Just imagine we all have the trust. We have like a government that wants to implement these, and then we have all the perfect conditions for all these to just go. Like it's tomorrow, like let's all build it. Where are we going to build it? Which infrastructure we have to build it? Are we going to have our own servers, everyone in their houses? Are we going to keep paying services in Amazon AWS services? Are we going to pay Microsoft? Like, I think all the theory and everything is great, and I appreciate, like, I'm learning a lot from everyone here. But I think sometimes we need more grounding into how we actually going to implement it. If tomorrow it's the day that it said, okay, now is the day we are going to go, we're going to do it. Let's go for it. How do we? Which servers we're going to use? Which computers? Where is the energy coming to pay for to have the servers on? Because at the moment we know all the problem with the servers for Bitcoins and all the water problems and all. We've done the natural resources coming to build the services. And like, I don't know. I think we also need to answer to those questions when we're thinking about the theory, because otherwise it's only floating ideas. And when the implementation comes, then they're like, okay, I'm going to have to pay an Amazon level services to actually implement what I want to do and to give EVI to people.
Yeah. So it'll be Cosmos validators powered by Scott's fire team, naturally.
No, but I think your question is worth it. Like a long answer, and the infrastructure question is key. Like we're not all about theory. Like we're also building stuff, which we will release it at one point. And I think it might be a mix of infrastructure at first. But again, what we are abstracting infrastructure for convenience. We should be running nodes, and maybe is a technical thing, but whoever probably has the technical ability should in their home run something. I'm more for like local computing and mesh nets and all of that. That should be part of all of this. We won't escape any dependency if, like, you know, we can run Bitcoin on Amazon. Okay. Have you solved that? Like, are you really independent? You're right. Yeah.
We come back to this point of everyone, whoever is holding the service and whoever is having the power to decide, the power to mind, and then we all go back to this paradigm, and then what we thought we have solved, we actually go back to the same problem. So yeah, we're in this forever loop of like, you know, like I think we need to find alternative ways to also think about infrastructure. I don't know if it's locally, but also not forget that not everyone has the economic capabilities to afford that. And if we don't take into account those people, there's undocumented people in the country that are also part of this problem. Like, how do we make those people come into these whole things? Like, in Germany, there's 500,000. In Spain, there's another thing, like migration, the migration flows, and all of these critical problems, and all these people that are in the move constantly. How are they being part of the system? How are we gonna make them? Because for them, debt is not recorded anywhere, for example, and but they still have it.
No, I think there's some hope in that, thanks to cryptography, or crypto, as I say. Crypto. And yeah, because like, for instance, I think one of the most beautiful thing about blockchain stuff is like you don't really need to prove your identity or anything to be part of the system. That's the most inclusive thing I've ever seen, and we should build on that. But I agree with you. It has to work for those who are legally recognized and for those who have no papers. I mean, we're all still human, and I think cryptography and collaborative cryptography and distributing computing in privacy preserving way, it's all stuff we need to build into these interoperable protocols. Otherwise, I mean, we will be stuck on other dependencies. We might be free, so it's I don't know, but it's a lot of work. But I agree, it's needed.
I agree that it's a key question. Sort of like, what are the necessary requirements for social transformation, particularly given the unequal distribution of risk, right? I mean, we talk about systemic risk sometimes, but actually risk is profoundly unequally distributed planet-wide. It's inconvenient to be poor. It's inconvenient to be oppressed, right? So the convenience of the fiat systems that we have are not equally shared. So I mean, I think the question is important, and this notion of derivative is also kind of interesting in this context. Randy Martin has an idea of the social derivative, where cultural movements actually are a way of surfing the volatility created by the fallout of late capitalism in order to create value for communities. Those values don't necessarily have to be monetary, although they can be, but the notion of the social derivative is risking together to get more of what we want. So it seems to me that a radical transformation in economy requires a process rather than like thinking about states. How do we sort of open a spread on capitalism, which allows us to risk on post-capitalism with the recognition that it's not a guarantee, right? And so sort of like to use our precarity differently, because right now our precarity is in relationship to capital, and we think we're going to solve it in a neoliberal model. I mean, not us here, but many people. I just want to have a little more money, and then I can be a subject in this system. But the real risk to me seems to be opening the spread on the value form itself in order to create new kinds of denominations, right? Because every denomination is actually a qualification of value. We forget about it with like US dollar, right? Because it's just a naturalized form. But actually, if you're holding USD, if you're thinking in USD, you're also ideologically and practically supporting the nation state. But if you can denominate differently, if you can actually create values and denominations around things you care about locally, but in an extended fashion, then you can measure value really differently.
I just wanted to make a point regarding the infrastructure question. I was wondering if we could think that we already have part of the infrastructure and thinking of these tools more as paradigm shifts or cultural practices. Like we already do clearing between us and our friends, so we already know we can already apply those things very locally and actually within our families or groups of friends. So just by expanding that within, like we don't need any servers for that. We already compute everything in our minds. Or like on paper if we need to do a bit more math. So I think if we think about infrastructure in terms of scale, like for some things, yeah, we will need like this big servers or whatever, the algorithms that like servers that can run algorithms for entire economies. But for just starting it, we can already just like start practicing it more, maybe with like our communities and so on.
Yeah, yes, and you're right. Like, oh, sorry, there was another question. I just wanted to say that, like, the good stuff is like computing is probably way more distributed than risk or reward, and in a way, like you can run algos for all economy in your browser. I mean, that's possible today. So even the I think there will be less need for supercomputing, more for distributed computation, like stuff like computers working together, solving problems in a distributed fashion. So I second your point.
I just want to stress the point that Tomas mentioned previously. We need something universal, right? The local currencies don't have enough liquidity or power and what you said about that. You had the 20K missing, right, for investment to really make an impact in the
network, yeah, and the
network,
local
right.
exchanges.
So
yeah.
here we are focused on mutual credit, right? Credit in between small entities, but there is also, right, another credit creation theory of money, and you mentioned Richard Werner, and I think that we also need something that's more universal, like a global co-fi bank that is able to issue credit and give credit to all those businesses.
Yeah,
and communities.
yeah, it might be global or like a distributed bank, but like the banking function, I think, and actually the investment role and function the banks play,
Credit creation for investment.
I think is pretty good. I have other problems with pure speculation on senseless derivatives or currency swaps. But like, do we really in the 21st century need banks? That's like we do need banking, maybe a credit creation, but yeah, not banks necessarily. Exactly.
So one of the key sort of elements of the MTCS, and looking at the graph structure, is that you can separate the credit creation, the issuance problem from the clearing problem, and you can take advantage of different forms of issuance and different forms of credit creation, all within sort of one superstructure, right? So you can benefit and you can use the mechanisms and benefit from it without prescribing the optimal way to issue a sovereign currency or the optimal way to issue global credit. You can have many different mechanisms all kind of plugging into a common network using a common algorithm to still with the goal to discharge the most amount of debt with the least amount of money, but where the money comes from, how it's created, the terms, the parameters, that's the thing that can be experimented with. And that's where a lot of the open questions were made, right? How do we denominate in other currencies, other units of account? How do we do accounting in different ways that aren't just in the dollar, or aren't just monetary per se, but can still plug into these sort of monetary mechanisms? Because that seems to be the issue with local currencies is the scalability, right? There's sort of a limited level of impact. And so if we can find a way to plug them into things that can actually reach global scale, then we might be able to unlock sort of more potential for experiments to actually connect and scale up across the globe. I want to, since we're coming on lunch, and what we're going to do at the end of every session this week is have a sort of like lessons learned, most interesting or exciting kind of takeaways. So I would like to hear from people here about something that was really insightful or that you took away from the session that you thought was really valuable, that was ideally not something you said yourself. So yes, Bill. I'm just going to kick off with Paolo's slide and not what he said during the presentation, but what he said right towards the end of the last session, which was this business of opening up a design space. And that's something we want to come to. And what we have begun to look at is there's macroeconomics, and that's the sort of statistical overview of everything. And then microeconomics, what Homo economicus will do, and the difficulty of there being a mesoeconomics at the moment, because there's no lens on that. And we got this very interesting paper from 2000, which is talking about the science, both of quantum physics and biology, having an equal problem, that they can look at the very small, they can look at the statistical outcomes, but they find it really hard looking at the topology of the network, at the internal structures that actually are where everything goes on. And one of the things that you say, there's a design space, that's brilliant. That's what we sort of try and expand on. And the other thing is MTCS, when we map the networks of the businesses that give us their invoices, we get graphs out of that Tomasz produces, which are shocking to everyone. They just never seen their local economy mapped out right in front of them, almost in real time. And that is the lens onto the mesoeconomy. That enables you to do market design. And since markets are totally conditioned by the means of exchange they use, if we can do market design and do mutual credit, so we have our own inside money there, and then if we learn to do the boundaries, sorry, I'm expanding. The takeaway is the design space. The takeaway is no, that Paolo said, I think there is a design space.
It is said waste is an error, a mistake of design. But well, continue. The highlights that I like the best, well, a lot of very interesting things, but your point about considering economy an ecosystem and not a company, the way of measuring that waste within an ecosystem is the food for something else. So that change of paradigm, the mental structure regarding how we perceive economy, I like it very, very much. And also this part of, you're talking about infrastructure, but this part of let's not replicate the same problems we have in the current system in the new system. And I think the biggest dysfunction of the current system is that it excludes 1 out of every 4 human beings, a quarter of the world population. And from these 2 billion, guess what? 70% are the smallholder farmers who has no access to electricity. It's the same number. Why? Because it's the same people. So if we don't want to exclude them from the infrastructure because they are the ones left behind, we need to keep a focus on not repeating this mistake again.
So I like your point also about this. How was it? If you measure value for whatever thing, no, maybe even natural capital assets or social impact or whatever, at the end you are missing something and you are incentivizing something instead of the other thing, and in the other hand, we have been talking all these days about like commodity currencies against credit ways of doing money, and I think we need both. So I think you are right, and this is the great side of it, and the universal money system, some way, no, local currencies, etc. But maybe we also need the commodity currencies to incentivize some things, not being talibalism in any of those. No?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a short one. Coined by informal systems, and I think specifically by Paolo Dini, the term COFI. From Giuseppe. Okay, let's correct it right now because this is the sort of thing we got right. Okay, so you said collaborative finance, COFI, the new term.
Yeah. And now it belongs to everyone.
Thank you.
We heard a lot of interesting, very interesting things here today. But what I personally most enjoyed was the general attitude of, I don't know how to put this, I think it's a combination of sensitivity and humility, I would say. I cheekily ask you what the how I would design a sovereign currency, and your answer was I don't know, and I think that's the only viable answer. And there is, I feel a sense of understanding of the enormity. How do you say that? Like this magnitude of the gravity of the situation we're in, and this is not something you encounter in conferences normally. It's specifically not crypto conferences. So or kind of like semi-leftist environments. Normally there are more answers than questions, and the spirit here is just amazing. It's like a water for someone who walks in the desert. So thank you for that.
If I could just quickly share. So Jackie said something to me yesterday, which was like, I don't understand who all these people are. They're not crypto bros. I was expecting a lot more like sort of crypto arrogance, but it's it's a quite special vibe here. Yes.
Yeah, my takeaway is like in one line, the reframing of the problem itself. So CoFi is the precision injection of liquidity where it eases debt where people need it the most. I think that for me really hit home, and it's really helping me think about the problem a little differently now. So thank you so much for whoever
Beautiful.
said that.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
I will second general spirit. Always a pleasure at the CC Hub. I just wanted to say I was really impressed. There was so much to take in, but the data, I really, really appreciated seeing that. I think there's a lot of opinions, but it's really nice to have that to back it up and to really capture the story. And you did it so well in such a condensed packet. And also the diagrams and data visualization. I think we definitely need more of this in the space, especially when dealing with such complex ideas with such a need for greater education. So just appreciating the data, the storytelling, and the diagramming, and hope to see more. Tomasz, we need you. We need to. Can we clone you?
There was a. So yeah, just to tie up the infrastructure part and also the waste part, there's no externalities, right? Like the computation is part of the biosphere. Servers heat the water that we drink. Infrastructure has to be decentralized. And waste has to be accounted for. Care work has to be accounted for. Their work has to be accounted for. There's externalities.
I just wanted to thank the person complimenting us or appreciating the space. On our side, we don't think we are doing so much intentionally. It's just we had this sense that there was a void in terms of communities or groups that could embrace this kind of visions and framework and political standing, like, I don't know, the inclusion of social sciences, the inclusion of complexity science, understanding that capitalism is not working, this kind of basic common sense things. And we just worked to have open spaces to welcome this kind of people, and it's fucking working. So thank you to all of you here. We are good because you are here and you're making this a good community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for making this space available to us.
I like the Giuseppe point he said about like not repeating the mistakes that the current system does, treating everyone else as stupid and trying to abstract everything again and thinking that people will not understand whatever we're speaking here. It's complex, but I appreciate that actually not doing that again and making that point was very important, because we shouldn't treat everyone else like an idiot if they don't understand things. Maybe some people didn't have the chance to just read as many books as we had or whatever. I really appreciate that.
So thank you. I would love to hear more reflections. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Janet from Kenya. My honest opinion is I find the session so complex for me, but I think it's a good challenge and I'm learning. My work generally is to implement the mutual credit to the communities in Kenya. and I'm not more of how do I say it? I'm not a programmer. I'm not much into crypto, but I think since yesterday the sessions have been so complex, but it's a good challenge, and I'm learning, and I hope we can learn to make things simpler, especially for now the real communities that we are expecting to use these systems. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would love to hear more reflections, but I have been informed that food is ready. So be aware.
Here's a thought to bring along while having lunch. I hear sometimes like that economists are stupid or that capitalism is not working, even though I'm in debt, for example, myself. I do see that it's kind of working so far, and and mutual credit is not everywhere. And I also would love to focus more on why is it not working yet, and what is the benefit of decentralization so far, and why is maybe now the time that we can decentralize or distribute all the computing and the trust, or in the far future, and maybe have more measures, maybe with help of AI, because people just want to see one price in the shop. So I would like to why is mutual credit not everywhere yet, as a question to take along with us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's Thursday's discussion. Very good. Does anyone else want to hold us from lunch? Yes, Hadar does.
I liked what Paulo said, that we are building for raising awareness in the hope that one day, there will be the right political change.
Beautiful. Any other reflections? Lunchtime, we can all we can continue to share. Yeah.
The afternoon session will resume at 2:30. It's going to be a bit intense, but hopefully in the following days it'll get easier.
All right, I gotta hook up my laptop. I'll ask around.
Okay.